For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Nadia Patel. I'm a life and business coach, and I predominantly work with women, many of who are mums, and I support them in creating a successful and fulfilling life on their terms. Most people come to work with me because many very often post-children, they're looking for a different career or a different life path, and they are stuck with kind of where to go. They are looking maybe to start a business, they have a dream, but maybe lacking in confidence to create this. Most of my clients are very successful on paper, but often feel that something's missing for them. And that is kind of the key stuff that I work with them on. So I will be sharing more about that with you actually later on in the group, because I know that this isn't something that I do very often. But today isn't so much about me as it is about what I'm bringing you. And I'm so excited to have SAIRA here with you. I've known SAIRA for many years. And in the last few years, I've known her more closely as when I started my coaching business. She's been a great mentor to me. She supported me and really helped me along my way. So, SAIRA, I'm going to hand over to you to introduce yourself, please.
Sure. So I'm Dr. SAIRA, and I'm a psychotherapist based here in Vancouver in Canada. And I work with people who are looking for a different approach to therapy. They're looking to incorporate their cultural values and their spiritual beliefs into the therapy process. And I'm just really loving this whole new platform since COVID-19, because we've had to be really creative in how we're doing online counseling, we're doing online groups, like whatever we can do to support people, because mental health is an important, I mean, as we're going to be talking about today, it's a really important thing to pay attention to in our families. And if we don't have the skill set, or if we don't have the understanding, it can feel like you're just wading in murky waters. So I'm here to help bring some clarity, I hope, today to some of the questions around relationship.
So, I know that this is a topic that many people, get quite shy to talk about. So I really want to invite you to, to feel that you can share anything that you want freely. Please do share any thoughts or insights in the comments. Also, any questions that you have, and we're going to do our best to get to those and answer them for you live today. To start with, I guess I want to share a bit about why I chose this topic, right? So, being married myself and speaking to many friends and clients, I know that this situation that we're currently in, has really, is causing a lot of tension in, our intimate relationships, and something that, we've never experienced. Like, we love our partners and our children, but spending 24 hours with them, 24 hours a day is really something else. So I guess to start off with, SAIRA, what would be really useful would be just if you could share, like, what are the key frustrations, that you're noticing that people are struggling with in their intimate relationships right now?
Well, it's almost like this whole crisis has put a magnifying glass on our relationships with our kids, our partners. So the things that seemed little and not that big of a deal before now seem like a huge, frustrating thing. So little things like my husband leaving his socks on the floor in the living room when he's watching TV, and then forgetting to take them upstairs. And so the next morning I wake up and there's socks on the floor. And it's a little thing and it's not a big deal, but when it's happening every single day, and I'm like watching him and I'm following him around the house, like, did he notice the socks? Did he notice it? It just gets so intense, right? Yeah. And so it's like those little things that it could roll off before, they're becoming bigger, they're becoming more aggravating, they're becoming like real triggers. And so it's not about the socks, right? It's about the frustration that I'm feeling in general. And the thing is, our partners, if we're in healthy, happy relationships, are the place for us to put all the crap. Like, that's where we work out all of the, right? It's difficult because they're safe, right? It's like, here I can be myself. I can be unhinged. I can be, for so long during this COVID thing, I had like one eyebrow, like only one, and only face on side, right? Only my partner is the only one who got to see that. So they get to see the non-polished, and we get to relax around our partners. And so usually in a regular lifetime, or, you know, before COVID-19, I think about it, he would go to work or I would go to work, and we'd be out of the house, we'd be in the house, and we'd spend these sweet pockets of time together, and we'd kind of reconnect. But now that we're always in each other's space, and especially sharing office space, like both of us have one office, so we have to coordinate our schedules. Like there's just a lot more bumping up against each other because we're in the same space for an extended period of time. But the same thing happened when he started working from home, right? So a couple of years ago, my husband started working from home, and we had this period of time where we had to kind of navigate, because I was working part-time, he was working from home. And then so those domestic duties and all those things had to be renegotiated. I'm like, well, if you're in the house anyway, might as well throw in a little laundry, buddy. And he's like, no, I'm working. So there's all of being together in the same space for extended periods of time is always going to be difficult. And it's different than a staycation, right? It's not like, oh, we're deciding to stay home and have a holiday, because you don't know when this thing is done. You don't know how long it's going to last. And it's not under happy conditions, not a choice anybody made. So I think, I wouldn't say there's one specific thing, but it's this, everything is just getting magnified. That's what the big problem is that I'm hearing about from clients and in my own friend circles and for myself.
Yeah. And I think the other thing also is, if you feel that you're living with someone and they're not being a team player right now, and you feel that, you know, you're doing the heavy lifting, because there's just more to do right now than there normally is. You know, if that's the case where you feel that your partner isn't really pulling his weight, well, what would you say to that?
I would say that's a normal day in my house. I'll say that's a normal day. So the way that I've had to make peace with it, so part of it is I have to look at my husband's background, right? So he came from a family of 3 boys where the boys were looked after and mom did everything, right? And there wasn't much as far as domestic work. She didn't really encourage that. Traditional Indian family, like they're looking after their kids and mom's doing everything. She also didn't work, so she had the time and the bandwidth for that. Fast forward to us living together, and I had to teach him things, right? Domestic things. And so there are days that I get frustrated. But what I've had to do is let go of it being my way, right? So I'll give you an example, the dishes, okay? He takes like 4 times the amount of time and probably 10 times the amount of water than I use for washing dishes. And so I'm sitting there in the kitchen, like kind of like hovering around him, but I need to just let him do it his way and not think my way is the only way. And then he gets more involved when I actually stop micromanaging the way that he's doing things. Then he's more clear, because otherwise he's like, you know what? Why don't you just do it yourself? Because clearly I'm doing a crappy job. So why don't you just, and then he feels bad and then he feels frustrated. So that book that I was telling you about, right? How, when we'll give you some resources as well at the end, there's a book that I was reading that really woke me up to domestic life and how living together is not romantic, right? Cleaning each other's toilets, that's not romantic, but it needs to be done, right? One of the other things I did was, honestly, I got a cleaner because I was sick of it. Like I was like, so for me, the cleanliness is like scale is here, right? For him, it's like he can tolerate a lot more dirt than I can. Right? And he can tolerate a lot more smell than I can. He just doesn't, men's bodies are different and their brains are designed differently. And so his threshold is much lower. Like it doesn't bug him. And it bugs me. And so I was in this constant state of like being worked up because things, when I have chaos, I can't do anything. I can't think, right? And so then him and I talked about it. We're like, okay, let's get a cleaner. So now the cleaner's not coming.
We're back to square one. No, I get it.
All those issues that we had solved are up again because we have to do it.
No, I totally get it. So I guess leading on from that, what I would ask is, look, when you can't get away from the tension that is sometimes there, which is kind of what we're used to doing, right? Like there's nowhere we can go. Like we can leave the house for like a little exercise or something, but we are predominantly stuck or, cocooned, as I like to call it, because it's a bit nicer. But, when you can't get away from the tension, how do we cope with that?
So one of the things, again, on a different day in another circumstance, my advice or my recommendations would be different. But what I want to acknowledge is that we're in a global emergency, right? This is not just we're deciding to take a few weeks off. This is like a global emergency. And so what that does to us as mammals, our instinct is to congregate. When we're in danger, our brain is designed to congregate with other like-minded mammals. Mm-hmm. And so we want to be around people who we think will care for us and keep us safe. All the people in your life who bring you comfort, friends, family members, like all of the people that you'd want to be maybe not forever together with, but who today I'd like to see, you know, this friend and that family member. Yeah. But all I have is this guy and maybe some little kids. I can't really rely on them for emotional support. And so this other person becomes the source of everything. Yeah. Right? Because we can't, like, I can't go to the gym and have my steam room with the girls. I can't go have a coffee with whoever. All of the things that I used to do, because for women, and this is a generalization, but generally speaking, women process through conversation. Yeah. Generally speaking, men speak when there's a problem to be solved. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so now imagine a woman talking to a man, and again, generalizations, but generally speaking, you know, I'm talking to connect and he's talking to problem solve. And so both of us are frustrated. Yeah. Yeah. Right? So so what do we do? How do we get away? I think that there's no kind of magic bullet, but the first thing is understanding why it's happening. Yeah. Right? Because once we can get it, that, okay, we're all in a state of emergency. Nobody's going to be functioning, you know, optimally right now, even though we're trying to. Yeah. And I think you and I were talking, Nadia, about how, you know, I could have a really, really productive day. Things are going really well. And the next day I just want to watch TV all day or Netflix, right? It's just like all the energy is zapped. And that's because a lot of our energy right now is going on keeping down the panic. Yeah. Whether we're aware of it or not, unconsciously, we're managing that panic, because we should be running around like panicking right now, finding other people to connect with and huddle with, but we can't, right? And so we're trying to stay dignified. One of the ways through for couples is to play. Yeah. So what does that look like as adults? Because for kids, we know what play means, right? But for adults, play are things like art, music, film, sewing, creative, painting, like all of those, you know, we think of those creative things, but even just watching, Faizan and I have been watching comedy together, right? And just like laughing, because that's our play. And in human societies, when there's been these tragedies and traumas, the way that we've got through is through the mediums that are expressing things that we're not able to express with our words, right? So so then whenever I'm watching Netflix, I'm like, I'm engaging in play. And choosing things to watch that are going to be a place for me to put my feelings, right? Yeah. Because there's all of these feelings, and if I don't put them somewhere, they're going on to my husband. That's where they're going to go. Or my kids, even worse, right? Who are even more like innocent than he is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that we definitely need to create space for other connection, whether it's Zoom calls, phone calls, you know, anything like that, because I think all the pressure just on one person is just way too much. Whereas at least if you find a friend or somebody that you can talk with, whether it's just to have a moan, whether it's to laugh, but I think just, you know, I think we have to be far more deliberate about making those other connections that otherwise naturally, just through being at work and going to the gym and other things that we would do, meeting mums at the school gate, you know, they would naturally come, but they're not right now. So they have to be so much more deliberate. Okay, cool. So, you know, I was watching one of the videos that you recommended around when you were talking about this, and you talked about how, you know, right now, you know, we are in a very sort of defense stroke fight or flight mode. Okay. And, you know, I was just wondering if you could explain a little bit about that so people can, because I think the more we understand our own state and the state that we're in, the more we can understand what's happening for our partners. And that just makes it easier to relate. And we're all going to be showing up slightly differently, but just to understand that a little more, I think would be really useful.
So the easiest way to understand it, the simplest way, is thinking of your brain as having 3 different modes. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the first mode, I call it the captain mode. So that's the part of our brain that's making plans, looking to the future, setting goals, is really personable, is really kind of lighthearted. That's what they would call the social engagement mode, or the captain. That's the newest part of the brain. Mm-hmm. Then there's the first mate. Now, the job of the first mate is to scan the horizon for danger. That's all they're doing all day long, just scanning for danger, scanning for danger. And that is a stronger part of the brain than the captain, because it's older, right? It's been there for more of our human history. And so scanning, all the time scanning. Now, when the first mate finds danger, right, he can either send it forward to the captain to make a decision about what to do about it, or he can engage the third part of the brain, which is the sheriff. Mm-hmm. The sheriff is just designed to keep us alive. Mm-hmm. That's it. The sheriff creates a physical response in the body that you don't get to think about. You don't get to decide to do that. It just happens, right? And so in common vernacular, we call that fight or flight. People have probably heard the fight or flight response, right? So fight or flight response is simple, but there's actually different dimensions, more dimensions to that. So there's fight. We're in the jungle. There's some rustling in the bushes, and so we become alert, right? And alert, not in a good way, alert in like there's danger, right? Mm-hmm. Then we see the tiger. So the first option would be to fight. If it's a kind of a baby tiger, we might fight that tiger. If very quickly we make a decision that that tiger's too big to fight, we got to run away. So we run. Mm-hmm. If we get caught, then our body, without our choice, goes into a freeze, which is kind of playing dead. Mm-hmm. And so whatever the tiger is doing to us will be least damaging. And if the tiger stops paying attention, we can get up and run away. Yeah. Okay, so that's how our brain was designed for thousands and thousands of years. Now, what does that have to do with being at home with your partner? Well, when there's no physical tigers, the brain is still looking for danger, right? The brain is still scanning. And so now somebody's tone of voice becomes a tiger. Yeah. Right? Somebody's eye contact or lack of eye contact becomes a tiger. Yeah. Somebody's posture, the way they're sitting, the way they look at you from the corner of all of these things get us activated when we're in this kind of fight or flight mode. It's like we're looking and we're getting triggered. Yeah. And the captain's like, there's an emergency, so I'm just going to sit on the side and let the two of you handle it. Mm-hmm. You see? So now, and then there's a fourth response that's a very human response. And that's something that they call fawn. So fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Now, fawn happens. What fawn is, it's about trying to appease the person before they blow up. So fawn, people who have had parents who are very, very critical, who might have been violent or abusive, many of them have developed this fawn response. So when someone, as soon as dad comes home, we're all making sure he's okay so that he doesn't blow up at anybody. Yeah. Right. And so that again might translate to a partner where you're finding yourself like looking after their needs, making sure they're okay, and then building resentment. Yeah. And it's a survival mechanism that was locked in from a really young age. Yeah. So that's what's happening inside the brain. And we think we can think our way out of it. But when we're in that, when the captain is on the side, the captain is our thinking mind, our decision making. That's why when we're fighting with our partner, we say things that we don't mean, right? Yeah. Because we're just trying to stay alive, emotionally alive. Yeah. And we would have never said those things if the captain was in charge, right? If our social engagement, our logical, rational part of our brain was up, we wouldn't say those things. Yeah. Yeah. So we say them to be hurtful because we're fighting the tiger. Yeah. No, I think it's just so useful to understand physiologically kind of what's happening in the body, because I think we can then understand where our responses are coming from. And, we were talking about this earlier and I said I'd share this with you. But, you talked about getting triggered, and I'm most definitely finding that I'm getting triggered right now more than ever over things that I think are quite small, but the reaction that I'm having to them just huge. I'll give you an example. So, a couple of weeks ago, it was my mother-in-law's 70th birthday, and we couldn't do any of the usual celebrations that we were planning, right? We're planning on going away, then we couldn't do that. Then we were going to have dinner. We can't even do that. We can't do anything. So I had this idea that I'm going to do this, put together a video for her where everybody sends in messages, and and we'll send it to her, and it'll just be really lovely. And she's not normally into stuff like that, but I was like, it's her 70th, it'll be really special. And so we did this, and I haven't had a lot of time for myself at this point. And so a lot of the spare time I had was put into putting this all together. And her birthday came, and I gave it to her, and we sent it to her, and immediately, or
quite soon afterwards. I mean, I think she was like, I know that she was, you know, moved beyond tears, really loved it. But I didn't get the, oh my God, Nadia, this is amazing. You know, I didn't get this big reaction that I was looking for, or hoping for, the acknowledgement that I wanted. And, you know, normally I very much get, you do what you do because you want to do it and you're not sort of attached to that. But I just, you know, I got so triggered. I was like, does she have any idea what it's taken for me to put this together? And I just couldn't get past it for like 2 days. And and then I was more angry that it was triggering me so much, because I was like, you know, why am I behaving like this? And then I started to notice that, you know, that not just me, but even talking to clients and friends, that, you know, things that wouldn't normally trigger us that much, or get us to feel quite negative or quite, and, you know, we're just getting more triggered, and you know, and our reactions maybe aren't what they normally would be. And I would, you know, and I'm just kind of wondering, like, you know, where is that coming from? Or like, you know, what do you say to that?
So the first thing that comes to mind as you're telling the story is about dopamine. So dopamine is the chemical in the brain that makes you feel a sense of like achievement, accomplishment, pleasure. Like, I did that thing, right? Dopamine is the hormone that's implicated in cocaine use, right? So people who use cocaine, they get these rush of dopamine. They just feel like on top of the world. They could do anything. And that's why it's hard to get off. It's a hard drug to get out of because you're changing your brain chemistry. So what happens in our regular day-to-day life is that we'll have little hits of dopamine throughout the day. So when I make my bed, I get a little hit of dopamine because I achieved this thing, right? When I get a hello from someone at the office and an acknowledgement, then I'll get a little hit. So all day long in a regular day, I'm getting these hits of dopamine. So here you're doing this project and we're in a time and space where you're not getting those regular hits of dopamine. You're just not, because your life is not structured in that way. And most of us feel a lot of guilt right now for not spending time the way we think we should, not being as productive as we think we should, all of those things. Guilt is a dopamine killer, right?
Yeah, I'm with you.
We don't have that kind of flooding us. And so here you're like building up and you're building up and there's this project and you're really proud of it. And the expectation is that there's going to be that wall, which will give you that surge. Yeah. And it comes, right? So we've been delaying, you've like in that particular story, you were delaying the dopamine hit until she finally got it. Yeah. But then got it. You know, you're describing the exact same thing. I mean, not exact, but that same like, happened to me. I was like editing some video. I learned all this software. I was so proud of myself. It took me hours and hours. And I finally showed it to my husband and he's like, oh, good job. And I was like, that's good job. You know how long this took, right? But that's something that we're missing, is that like feeling of accomplishment and pleasure and being proud of ourselves. We're not getting it in the way. And so yesterday, for Mother's Day, we went out and we played some Frisbee. And every time I caught that Frisbee, I could feel it. I'm like, oh, I feel so good. I feel so good. Frisbee, right? But like, and I'm like, okay, so that's something I need. Every time I go to the gym, I feel proud of myself because I made it. Whatever I do there, right? But now I'm not doing that. So that regular thing is not coming. So that could be one of the reasons why you were feeling so disappointed and angry, because that was going to be your source of feeling proud. Yeah,
no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, no, I love that. So, you know, I think what would be, you know, really interesting is, you know, I think if you could talk a little about, you know, it's not business as usual right now. We need some different tools to cope in our relationship than we normally do. And one of the things that we were speaking about before we got onto this live was, you know, just different little tools, like, for example, you know, having an emotional management plan, also about the fair fighting rules. And I was just wondering, like, if you could start with those kind of things, like, you know, what kind of tools can really help us right now, you know, when, you know, specific tools, I guess, that we can kind of call upon, that when, you know, things aren't, you know, going the way that we want them to, or just to manage this phase. Yeah.
So remember I was talking earlier about the tiger, right? Yeah. So what we need to do is find tools that will trick our brain, or not even trick, kind of wake our brain up to the fact that there's no tiger here. So one of the easy ways to do that is to regulate our breathing. So everyone says, take a deep breath, take a deep breath. There's actually truth to that, right? There's a technique that I can teach you right now. It's called soft belly breathing. It's really simple. All you do is you inhale through the nose. So we'll do that together. Inhale. And then exhale. So inhale through the nose. And exhale through the mouth. And as you continue to breathe that way, just let your belly be soft. And as you do that, what do you notice happening, like right around here? Can you feel that?
Yeah.
That feeling of like, it's just calming us down, right?
Absolutely.
So what that's doing is it's telling your body there's nothing here to be afraid of. Yeah. Because if there was, my breath would be a lot faster. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. With children, a technique you can use with children, because kids don't really get it when you say take a deep breath. So what I do with my kids is I blow up the birthday candles. So I put my hands up like this and I get them to blow out the, they know how to do that, like, right? And then I'll go like that, and then I'll go like that, and then I'll wiggle and be like, oh, blow a little harder. And it's because then it becomes lighter, it becomes a game, and it helps the child to regulate. And so now my kids are doing that to me when I'm stressed. They're like, Mama, you want to blow out some candles?
I love it. I love it when they use your stuff on you. Yeah.
Way to get the body to self-regulate. Really simple technique, right? Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the fair fighting rules. There's actually a resource, and we'll kind of put that in the link somewhere in here, where there's actually a sheet, and you can like read all of these. But there's lots of different ideas. But here's some very specific ones. So before you begin fighting, just think about why you're feeling upset. Like, what's really upsetting me? Is it the socks on the floor? Mm-hmm. Right? Is it the lack of response from my mother-in-law? Like, what is it that's really upsetting me? And usually what's really upsetting you or me is that we've translated that action to mean either we're not worthy or they don't love us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That's the translation, is like, he left these on the floor because he doesn't love me. Right? She didn't say wow because I'm not worthy of that kind of a response.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we can go deeper into like what's the feeling under this, rather than just getting stuck on the activity that the other person did. Why is it triggering me? I say to my clients, I say, people are going to come and press your buttons. Yeah. Like, they're going to do that. So your job is to shrink your buttons.
Yeah.
Right? Can't stop pressing. We have to shrink our buttons, like figure out, why is this activating me? So that's the first thing, is why am I upset? Beyond the thing, what am I really upset about? I'm feeling unloved, I'm feeling unseen, I'm feeling unworthy, probably one of those.
Yeah.
The other thing in fights is we should discuss one thing at a time. So do not, and that it's hard to do in a fight, because like all this other stuff, and especially women's memories for emotional, like things that are emotional, everybody remembers, but women have a very specific kind of memory. And so
bringing up the past and a long list of things. Yeah.
Often, especially in a heterosexual relationship, the man doesn't even remember those things. So you're bringing things up, and it's like, he doesn't even, like, what are we fighting about? Are we fighting about this? Or I didn't even know I did that. Did I do that? So just keeping, like, what is the problem at hand, and sticking to that, and being really, it's tempting to be like, this is just like last year when you did that. No, right? We just stick to what is it right now in front of me that's upsetting me. So that's the other thing, one issue at a time. And then there's the usual ones, like no degrading language, name calling, right? And because that, remember, the first mate is going to want to protect you. And so there's going to be things coming out of your mouth, but those things can't be taken back, right?
Yeah.
If you're name calling someone, like, they're going to remember that, and they're going to feel that, even if you say sorry. So just being really mindful not to use any sort of degrading language, to keep that. You can fight, and we will fight, and we should fight. It deepens a relationship, but always keeping your respect for the other person paramount. Mm-hmm. I respect you as a person. I wouldn't use this language with a colleague. You know, I'm not going to use it with you. Yeah. So that degrading language. Stonewalling. So sometimes people are like, we've heard about, you need to walk away, right? When it gets too heated, you need to walk away. And that's really good advice. However, in relationships, we're often recreating our earliest attachments. So we're often recreating our relationships with our mom or with our dad, or that they had with each other. We don't know that we're doing that, but that's what's happening when we're under stress. And the reason for that is because in the first 5 years of life, we've set down this track in our brain of what a healthy relationship looks like and what healthy interaction looks like.
Yeah.
And so if you think about your own parents, and I think about my parents, I'm like, oh, like that was my template, right? Under stress, that's who I'm going to go back to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the walking away is one way to kind of stop, like interrupt that going back and dealing with it the wrong way. But the key is you got to come back, right? So an example of that would be, you know, we're having an argument and usually I'm the one who walks away, right? I'll walk away, but I'll say, let's talk about this in an hour, or let's talk about this tomorrow. Or my husband might say, I'm going for a drive. We'll discuss this when I get back.
Yeah.
Another rule, don't bring up anything important after 8 p.m.
I love that. Yeah.
Because willpower is like a tank. Okay. So we start off in the morning, we have this tank full of willpower. Then all day we're like saying no to the cookies and not screaming at our kid and doing this assignment that we really don't want to do. And by the end of the evening, by about 6, 7 o'clock, our willpower tank is depleted. And so all the control that we've had all day long, we don't have it anymore. That's why people binge on chips at night. Yeah. Right? It's because we have no more willpower. It's gone. And so that we're less able to do it in a fair way the later on it goes in. Because I remember when I first married Faison, like, well, before when we were dating, we would be up to like 2 a.m, like, and then I learned about this and I'm like, oh, no wonder. Like, then we're both tired the next day and angry. Yeah. Right. But the key is to set a time to come back to it. So they say never go to bed angry. I say it's okay to go to bed angry as long as you have a time you're going to come back to it. And both of you know that. Yeah. Sometimes you just need a good night's sleep and then deal with it when you're fresher. That's a really big one.
Yeah. No,
we have to be willing to not be right all the time. Like, you know, like I want to say the last thing and I want him to get it. And it's like,
yeah, giving up being right, I think, is one of the hardest things for human beings. No, I really like that. And I think having a plan about how you're going to fight is really key. And you know, what, like you were sharing about just the walking away, like something that me and Sam have been using for some time now is just, you know, when you do get to that, because we kind of, I guess everybody fights differently, right? Like, so he's more of wants to walk away and I want to shout it out and fight it out. And that's just, you know, what I do. And less so since I've become more aware that it doesn't really help, right? And, you know, we don't want to say things we can't take back. But in that space, just having like a safe word. And if one of you says it, then you just know you've got to take a time out and you're going to come back in like 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever the other person needs. And it's like when the person calls the word, ours is like brimstone. Stop. Someone says brimstone and we go, right, that's enough. Like the other person has reached their limit of what's okay.
You don't want to go into damaging the relationship, right? We can have different opinions. We can fight things out. But if it goes into that respect piece that we were talking about before, like that's where it gets, we don't want to do that, right?
Yeah.
The other thing, which is sometimes hard for women who like to shout, no names mentioned, is taking turns, right? Because sometimes one person will just go on and on and on and on and on and on, and the other person is just like this, right? Yeah. So it's actually like taking turns. And one of the things I advise, so now these are the kind of the 101, like what we should all be doing. I'm going to take it a little bit to the next level here, if you will, Nadia, if you can stay with me.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to say I'm putting aside, like, we're not talking about abuse. So I'm not talking about violence or abuse. Like, that's another category that you need kind of professional intervention. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about verbal arguments, right? Where it's not about one person having all the power. And so it's not an abusive situation. It's a healthy, normal kind of relationship, and we fight. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that one of my mentors taught me is this concept called standing in the fire, standing in the sacred fire. And so sometimes somebody just needs to, and the topic might be you, but really it's about needing that energy to move, right? In that moment, if I could be the lighthouse, if I could be the steady, unmoving presence, while that person's like on their boat, like in the rocky waters, I can just be that presence and then let them go for it and not let it hit me. So another analogy is like a baseball, right? So somebody's throwing a baseball at you. You have 3 choices. You can let it hit you and then look at the bruise and tell other people about the bruise. And then we call that the victim mentality, right? Where it's like, it's hitting. And I'm not doing anything about it, but I'm complaining about it.
Yeah.
That's one way of responding. The second way of responding is you take out your bat and you're like, oh yeah, you're going to, well, wait till you see what I have to say, right? And then it goes back and forth.
Yeah.
The third way is just taking out your glove and catching it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, okay. And then, oh, and there's another one. And there's another one. And some of it might have truth to it. That's why it hurts, right? But when you catch it and consider it later, then you're actually able to let your partner vent it out.
Yeah.
And as I do it, I actually visualize myself like with the flames burning. Like I'm standing in the fire and the flames are burning, but I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
And it makes it that much safer then for us to have the really difficult conversations.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I actually feel shamed, right? I feel the shame when he calls something out or whatever. I feel this heat just like rising in me. And usually I want to defend against the shame feeling. So I defend myself and I don't really hear, he loves me and he wants me to be better. And it's coming across a little harsh, but there might be some good in what he's saying. So I have to feel okay with that shame in me coming up.
Oh, beautiful. No, that's really good. And I love that kind of like, you know, the catching of the ball for me is just like, we're just holding space for the other person. And it's a really hard thing to do. And
it's so hard.
We sort of talk about it like it's just a really easy and obvious thing, but I think it takes real mastery just to be able to hold that space. And the thing that I think is also really useful is when you kind of know that's your pattern and what you do. I'll often say to Sam, like, when I do this, I just need a hug. Mm-hmm. I just need physical proximity to you, closeness. And, you know, the more crazy I seem, that's like more what I need. It's not about what you're going to say. So I guess when you can kind of also understand your patterns and then be able to ask for like, when I do this, this is kind of what I need you to do.
You don't do that while the fight is happening. You
no,
do that
of course not. Before. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's taken years to explain, like, when I do this, I might seem like I want you to go away, but actually what I want you to come close. Yeah.
And usually, because we're wired for attachment, we're wired for connection. Usually what we want is for the person to bust through our angry wall and get back to us, right? And we can practice this with our kids because our kids are really great at exploding all over us. At least mine are. I don't know. Like, just exploding. And so that's a great place to practice standing in the fire, because for them, I can understand. I'm like, okay, he's overwhelmed. He's unhappy about this, and it's not personal. Mm-hmm. But when it's another adult, it can feel a lot more. So sometimes I actually visualize him as a little guy, just like throwing a tantrum.
Yeah.
And what he needs someone to come closer. We've had this lie that's been told to us for the last 25 years, which is when children are misbehaving, they need to have a time out.
Yeah.
Right. The research now tells us that what you're doing when we do that, when we give a child a time out, is we're saying your behaviors and emotions are not okay with me. Go figure it out on your own. Yeah. So now you're getting a 3-year-old or a 7-year-old to try to manage their first mate and their sheriff.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas what we need to do is we need to be their captain, and we need to bring the child closer. So I call it time in rather than time out, right? So we move towards our children when they're acting out. Yeah. And same with our partners. We move towards our partners.
Yeah. No, really, that's so useful. And I love the fact that the same tools can be used with both, right? Like, that's just so, because once we understand the concept and what the tool is, we can apply it everywhere. So no, that's really...
We have to put our own ego aside, which is hard to do. Yeah. And I have women all the time saying to me, and men saying, well, why do I have to be the one to do it? Why can't they do it? And I always say, well, whoever's figured out that there's a problem probably also has the clarity to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like, you're seeing the problem. Perhaps you can be the one to also bring the solution rather than waiting for someone else to do it. You know what to do. Just do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so, and the other thing that I wanted you to speak a little about was the emotional management plan, that when things do get too much and we're just like, okay, we can't seem to figure this out right now, or there isn't, your kids are there, and there isn't the space or the time or the mood to sort things out. How do what do you think is the best way to go deal with yourself?
One way that's really helpful is to do something physical.
Yeah.
So get the energy moving in the body, because remember, all those fight or flight hormones are up, right? If they don't go somewhere and get repressed, then that actually starts creating damage in the body. Our cortisol levels are so high like compared to our ancestors, that our bodies are breaking down. Like people are having heart attacks at 45 and like all, like, that's not a normal thing, but it's because our cortisol, our stress hormones are way too high in the body. So one of the simple things to do is something physical, and you might feel a bit dumb doing it or silly, but jumping jacks, go into your bedroom, close the door, and do 45 jumping jacks. It'll move the energy. It'll get you feeling a bit more lighthearted. That's the play, right? Transferring it, or going for a walk outside. Getting into nature is a great way to shift some of that mindset of like, I'm so riled up. You could call a friend if you have a friend that deeply supports your relationship and isn't going to change their impressions of your partner with the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
But probably not your mom.
Yeah.
Right? Probably not your own family members, because then they'll have their like, oh, I can't believe, but the friend that you can just, like you said, moan to, and that would be so something physical, being in nature, calling someone about it. What I do is I write. So I have a journal, and I just I so angry, and I like go to my chair and I'm like, don't, mama's writing, and
yeah.
And I write and I write and I write and I write, and everything that I want to say, like all those mean words, and I just put it in my journal. So it's somewhere to go, right? And no one ever has to see that, but it's a place for it to go.
Yeah. I love the way you say not your mum. If I go to my mum with this, she'll be like, are you getting so upset over something so small? And then you feel even more annoyed because you're like, do you not get that this is actually quite a big deal to me? So yeah, I think picking somebody, having that person that just is going to let you vent.
And like your partner. They like your partner.
Yeah, absolutely.
They know them. They like them. They're invested in them. So whatever you tell them isn't going to like change their.
Yeah.
Because that's always a tricky space, because I want to be able to say what I need to say to my friends, but I also don't want them to hate my husband.
Yeah, absolutely.
It has to be people who already are really deeply invested in the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so and then I guess before we kind of go on to questions, I know I think we could talk for hours, so it's like just trying to figure out where we can just the key points to try and get in that you talked about is, look, we've got to be realistic here. We can't say that we're never going to argue and this isn't going to happen, but the really important part is the repair. And that's something that you were kind of speaking about, which I thought was really useful. And I think that how to best come back from it and repair it are things that we can learn. And I think especially right now, where the repair is probably more important than ever, and we kind of need to do it maybe in a more timely manner, but also to be aware of how to best bring that in. I guess I'd love to hear what you say to that. But one of the things that I learned, which I thought was really useful, was sometimes we want to do the repair at this particular point, and we don't really look to see where our partner is. And if you kind of think the way that our world works, we've all kind of got our own movie playing in our own head, and you kind of come along and say, hey, I want to talk about this thing right now, and they're just not in the space for that. And I've just learned that just respecting that now might not be a good time, and they can actually say, no, I don't want to talk about that right now, but can we talk about it? But they have to give you, when can you talk about it? Because I think when there's that uncertainty of like, you don't want to talk about it right now, when do you? Yeah.
Nadia, is when women say, I want to talk about it, what they usually mean is, I want to give you a lecture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But when a woman says, I am so sorry, that was so unkind of me, and that was so out of line, and you didn't deserve that, and I just want to apologize. You don't have to have a conversation. Yeah. Just admit it. You screwed up. Right? Yeah. Even if they were 50% to blame, because they most likely were, admit my part in it. It's so hard to do, because people think, well, then he'll have the power, but we're a team. My God, we're a team. Right? Otherwise, we're set up as like this tug of war, but we want to both get on the same side of the rope, right? We, especially now, we want to get on the same side and look out at the problem. So he's not the problem. It's us together against the problem. Yeah. And the problem might be our fighting style. The problem might be our finances. The problem might be some other thing, but we're together in this. And so one of the fast ways to do that is just admit that you're wrong. Yeah. Admit it and say sorry. Yeah. And it doesn't make you a smaller, like my dad always say, sorry doesn't make you a smaller person, but I never heard him apologize once in my life, right? So, but it's teaching our kids.
Yeah.
Right? Teaching our kids about, yes, there's going to be conflict, we're going to have different opinions, and the relationship is more important than anybody's opinion, or how, you know, much money we're spending on gas, or how, like, whatever, all the random stuff we fight about.
Yeah.
The relationship. And so I would say being willing to sincerely apologize for the part in it, and not explain it away, not be like, well, I was really tired, or, you know, I've had a long day, or the kids have been really, no, don't make excuses. Just say, that was inappropriate. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Own it. I think owning it is the most powerful thing we can do. And
the big thing is I really overreacted there. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
That's a theme in our family, is I'm always overreacting.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think just I've definitely found, since I've been far more willing to own it with my husband, that, you know, arguments don't really last very long, and we both realize, like, we're going to own it at different points, and we just apologize a lot quicker. It's done with, and there isn't this kind of like, I'm not going to talk to you for 2 days and all of that, because, you know, you've kind of done that maybe in the early years of your marriage and seen it's not worth it, and it doesn't really go very well, and actually you end up feeling really shitty, so it's just not what you want.
Especially for moms, like, your children are then walking on that like razor blade of tension that's in the house. They can feel it.
So I think what we're going to do now is, there was a pre-submitted question that I had here, and I thought we'd start with that, and then I'm going to just like also check the feed, and I know we've got lots of people watching, and I'm going to see what else is kind of coming up. But the first question I have is, me and my partner are both normally working, and I'm really resentful that right now I've been furloughed, and he gets, and looking after the kids, like, you know, 12 hours a day, and he gets to go work in peace and upstairs. How do I deal with this anger and resentment towards him?
Beautiful question. So I want to flip that question on its head. How do you think he might be dealing with the anger and resentment that he feels that you don't have to work? That he's locked up in a room all day while his family's having fun. This actually just came up a couple of weeks ago. I was in a workshop where the couples were having this conversation, that one person is in kind of high work mode and the other person's doing all the domestic and childcare. And there can be these assumptions about how good the other person has it. Right?
Yeah.
And to remember that it's, one of the things that I'm doing is like really having a lot of empathy for my grandmother, right? Who, that was her job. Her job was to look after the home and raise the children. And that was her only job. And I'm sure she had dreams. I'm sure she had things she wanted to do, but that was her life. And so I'm starting to really be grateful about all the opportunities that we do have. One of the things that I was doing early on is I was watching the series. Have you heard of The Handmaid's Tale?
No, I haven't.
So it's a book by Margaret Atwood, and it's on Netflix, at least in Canada and in the States. And it's really powerful. And it's all about gender roles and how, and kind of this dystopian society in the future where women are, like, it's very clear what women are allowed to and not allowed to do. And watching that kind of helped me work out some of my anger, because I could be angry at the show and not angry at the husband, right? So again, having places to put that resentment, and film, music is a great way to just process that, because right now we're all trying to do our part, right? So if you can see it as your part for now. Yeah. Another thing that I found helpful was talking to other moms that were in a similar situation, who were working before and now aren't, and having that camaraderie, knowing that you're not the only one that's feeling this way, and it's temporary, right? Remembering that it's we don't know how temporary, for how long. But I think especially for working moms, it can be a reminder of like, oh yeah, this is what I don't want, right? Yeah. This is what I don't want. And also, like, for me as a working mom, I'm realizing that all of the things that we used to do, rushing kids from activities and here and there while working, and I've decided that, like, I don't need to do that in the future, because what my kids really want is me without my phone. That's what they want. Yeah. Right. So if and I would say to this mom, like, if you can build in a portion of the day, just a small portion, 15 to 20 minutes of the day, where you're undividedly connected to your kids, and it's not about schoolwork, it's just about play with them. For many of us, that's where you're going to get those hormonal, those good feelings, right? The good hormones, the happy hormones, because the bonding is happening, rather than I'm the mom and I have to look after everything. To get into that child space and that play space with them for a period of time every day can mitigate. But I want to say also that You're allowed to feel resentful. You're allowed to feel frustrated. You're allowed to feel like it's not fair. It's not fair. You didn't choose this. None of us chose this, right? So giving yourself permission to be angry and resentful. And then after that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very well answered. I love that, because I think most of us through this pandemic have felt moments of resenting our partner or somebody for something or another. And I think just how to deal with that is so important. And knowing that there isn't a right way, but just having some more understanding about what their situation is. And also maybe for me, I think it's that there's something you want that they don't have. So you're resenting that they've got peace and quiet. And maybe that's just something you want. That's a little something you want for yourself. But when they are down from working, maybe you just need to go create that for yourself. Independently going for a walk, or just taking, half an hour out in your bedroom and just giving yourself the thing that you feel they have that actually you really want access to. And so there's usually a reason that we feel that kind of resentment. And so, I'm going to now go on to the feed here and see what is coming up. And then I've got one more question also. Bear with me. It says, okay, you mentioned looking underneath the action to examine the feeling, to identify what you're really concerned about. Do you have any tips on how to do this?
Yes. So there's this, if you can think of it, the image of an iceberg, right? Mm-hmm. So anger is at the top. That's what you see. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's the emotion that you see. Yeah. Under the iceberg is going to be things like helplessness, loneliness, fear, shame, all of these different pieces. And that's actually another worksheet that we could put as a link, as a resource link. So I would say just look at that worksheet and really ask yourself, besides angry, what else do I feel? And you might want to journal about that. Like you write the prompt down, besides angry, what else do I feel? And then start writing about that. Brene Brown says your journal is your best therapist, right? Because there's a part of all of us that's very wise, right? I call it like the wise woman inside, right? We all have that soft, still voice that guides us. And I think if we can take time on a regular basis to get in touch with that, whether it's through journaling or meditation or through dance or through creative painting, whatever it is, for walk in nature, taking time every day to get in touch with that, then asking, knowing that there's different parts of you. There's a part of you that's angry, and there's other feelings as well. Yeah. And most of them have to do with feeling, like I said, they don't love me, or I'm not worth it. Those are usually what's underneath it.
Yeah. Anger just is what sits on top of that. So
anger is a power emotion, right? It's like out, whereas these other emotions are very deflated. So we don't want to feel those emotions. We'd rather feel angry and resentful and frustrated and irritated than sad and lonely and afraid and helpless.
Yeah. No, that's really, really makes a lot of sense. And hopefully that's answered that question in a way that the person now has some idea of what to do. And one other pre-submitted question that I had here, just I think to end, is I am someone asking, how can I support my partner who struggles with anxiety and some mental health issues? Because obviously I want to be more supportive. This is coming from the woman to the man, and obviously we know that men aren't as great at talking about these things. So what would you say to that?
A great question. So as I mentioned earlier at the beginning, is that people who already have pre-existing conditions like anxiety, depression, this is that much more difficult, because it's like the metaphor that I use with my clients is like, we're all running a marathon, except you started with a 70-pound backpack.
Yeah.
Right? So they're carrying more. And I think, first of all, the fact that this person is asking the question speaks volumes to the relationship and to the commitment and to the love, right? And so first I want to acknowledge that you're asking. I think what would be really great is if you were to ask your partner, what can I do to help you through this? Yeah. And he might not come up with anything right away. But then a few days later, how is your anxiety today? Is there anything I can do to support you?
Yeah.
One of the things you could do is do the soft belly breathing together. just that slow, deep breathing, because again, it'll help regulate. And going outside for a walk with some trees and grass around, that also can help people. And actually encouraging him to kind of get out if he's feeling safe enough to get out and just go for a walk. That's another way you can support them. Also, this is a great time to get a therapist. Like, it's a good time to have that like professional support, because it's different now than it was 6 months ago as far as how people are managing their anxiety. So yeah, but I would say ask your partner, learn about anxiety, and then there's a couple of little tricks there on the breathing and the walks and getting a therapist.
Yeah, love it. And we just got one last question that we're going to go to before we end. How do you handle hurt that you feel below the anger? It often causes me to retreat and then comes into isolation.
Great question. So one of the things that we didn't talk about much today, but that is kind of the foundation of this whole approach to relationships, is something that we call attachment. So the most important thing for human survival is attachment. A baby can have no food, no water, no shelter, no clothes, but if they're attached to another human adult, they'll be okay.
Yeah.
Right? Attachment is that thing that's the foundation of our survival. Now, when there's anger and hurt, all of these things separate us from the people that we're bonded to, right? And what'll happen is it won't just be this hurt. It'll bring up all that other hurt from our childhood. Unfortunately, like it presses those buttons, right? That have been there for a really long time. So I would ask myself, if this wasn't about him, if this wasn't about him, if this wasn't about us, and it was actually about my mom or my dad or my sibling when I was little, what's actually going on here? Deeper than just this surface hurt that I'm feeling. Because usually you can find a link.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, with the socks thing, right, the link for me is that I was so obedient as a child.
Yeah.
Right? And if I wasn't obedient, there would be a response. And so I'm feeling like, I'm such a good, look, I'm letting you be so disobedient. How dare you be so disrespectful and disobedient? So I'm in that role. I'm the mom and he's the kid, right? In that interaction. And so I realize it's nothing really to do with him. It's about me and my rules. And he's breaking some rules that I have that I picked up as a kid.
Yeah, that you weren't allowed to break.
That I wasn't allowed to break. Now how dare he break them? Yeah. I wasn't allowed to.
Yeah. No, that's so interesting, because I also, conversations I've been having with clients and other coaches is that in this time, there's a lot of that past trauma coming up for people, stuff that we thought that we'd kind of worked through. And, suddenly in these circumstances, this stuff's coming back up that we're having to deal with. And I'm guessing this is all part and parcel of the same thing, right? That what you're talking about, where that trauma from our childhood or, the rules that we have, etc., that's all coming up. And I guess it's just trying to, how to manage that right now.
And also, like, I think that there's an importance to have balance, right? There's a time for the inner work and the self-exploration. And then there's time for just having fun and playing and not really thinking too much about this. We call it, in school, we called it navel gazing, right? Like if you're navel gazing all the time, you're missing what's happening in the world. Yeah. And so being able to also come out from the self-reflection and the understanding to just like, what can we just do that will be a little bit fun today?
Yeah. And I think, there has to be a balance between the two, like you said, because I think it's important to understand where behavior comes from, but we can spend our whole life going backwards and studying that. And actually what we really want to do is learn how to cope in the here and now and move ourselves forward. So I think, that's something I definitely find, when I'm working with somebody, that understanding the root cause is really key to shifting it. But, we could spend all our time there, and that's not going to support the person in creating more of what they want.
What we want to do is shift, right? So whatever happened back there. How does that experience inform me today? And if it's not informing me in the way I want it to, what do I need to shift about my understanding of that experience so it can inform me in a different way today? Right?
I feel honestly, it feels like I don't want it to come to an end, because it's just like, I love talking to you about this. It's so informative. And I think it's really, I can see the amount, everybody who's watching, and that there's such great comments. And I know it seems that people have loved it. So I really want to thank you for your time today, SAIRA, because it's been amazing. And I guess what I think will be really useful is we'll put some of the stuff that we've spoken about from the book that you told me about, this How Can I Be Your Lover When I Can't Stop Being Your Mother. I think that's the one that is on my shelf that hasn't quite yet been read. But yeah, I think that's a great book for relationships. And also we've got the fair fighting rules and the how to look beneath the iceberg. So we'll kind of put all of those resources, pin them in the comments. But also what I would just love for you to share with everybody is, I know you're up to lots of fantastic things right now. And, if people want to connect with you, can you just share with them a little about, what kind of projects are you working on, and, where can they find you?
Sure. So the big project right now is my YouTube channel. So Dragonfly Wellness TV. That's where I'm putting kind of interviews, and there's some COVID stuff. There's some non-COVID stuff. Most of it is new. Some of it is things I've done before, but more of this, right? Conversations about how to support ourselves, our families, as we're going through whatever it is that we're going through. So that's Dragonfly Wellness TV. And then I have a page on Facebook as well. It's called Dr. SAIRA, DRSAIRA. So you can check out that page. And on that page, I put, new videos that I posted or different resources. So you can kind of join that as well. It's an open public page that you can check out. And then, my website and blah, blah, blah. But I think right now the big ones for me, the juicy ones, are the YouTube channel and the Facebook page. So have a look at those. I'm also on Instagram, Dr. SAIRA Cares. So you can get a vision into my own, behind the scenes, what's happening in the world on Instagram.
Amazing, amazing. So I'm going to ask you to put that in the comments below. So if people want to write to you or connect with you, they know how to find you. But yeah, just want to let you know that, the last few comments that I've got here are great sessions, flown by, and we've got 4 people requesting a part 2. So, ooh. Yeah. So, watch this space is what I say, and let's see what we can bring. But yeah, thank you so much. It's been amazing. And I'd just like to tell everybody out there that, please share your insights, share your comments, share your thoughts. And the more you do that, the more we kind of get what you've got from it. And then we have further ideas about what other stuff you'd like to see. And yeah, I'm sure we'd both love to bring you something else. So yeah, watch this space. But anyway, until next time, have a great night, and thank you very much. Bye.